Ms. Leslie, seconded by Madame Moore, Abitibi-Témiscamingue, moves that in the opinion of the House, microbeads in consumer products entering the environment could have serious harmful effects, and therefore the government should take immediate measures to add microbeads to the list of toxic substances managed by the government under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, 1999. Debate. The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin, I'd like to note that I'm sharing my time with the member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. And Mr. Speaker, I'd also ask if you could give me maybe a 2-minute warning so I know when my time is coming to an end. Thank you. I am really proud to stand here and debate our motion and to start this process for banning microbeads in products that we use every day, Mr. Speaker. The time has come for us to begin that step, to take that step towards protecting the health of our ecosystems and our health as humans. And I'm really pleased that the NDP is dedicating this entire day of debate to the issue of microbeads. My only regret is that my colleague from Windsor West isn't here today. Because really, Mr. Speaker, this is his motion and not mine. The MP for Windsor West has been working tirelessly with industry and with environment groups and with citizen action groups on this issue. And unfortunately, he's not here today to see his work culminate in an Opposition Day motion, in a debate in this House, because his grandmother passed away last week, and he is actually at her funeral today, speaking at her funeral and with his family. And, you know, Mr. Speaker, we're real people in this House, and we have real joys and real sorrows. And this is a moment of sorrow for our colleague from Windsor West, and he is with his family where he should be, celebrating the long life and legacy of Marion Massey, affectionately known as Ma, who lived a long 96 years. So our thoughts are with him and his family, and we'll carry on this debate. It's officially in my name because you need to be here for the motion to be in your name, but we know in our hearts that it is his hard work that actually brought this motion to the House. So what are we debating? Well, microbeads are these tiny little beads of plastic, and you'd be amazed, Mr. Speaker, what they are in. They are in so many different products. You think about those products you use to create that rosy glow that you have, Mr. Speaker, and exfoliate your skin. Those little abrasive toothpastes that we have, or the body wash that we're using in the shower. Well, it may be okay to use these microbeads on our skin, but you know what? It's not okay to use them once they get into the environment, once they get into our ecosystems, and they're not okay for our health, because these microbeads are plastic. A tube of toothpaste has tens of thousands of these tiny little plastic beads in them. We brush our teeth and it goes down the drain into our waterways. We wash our face, millions of these tiny little plastic beads, and they go right down the drain and they end up in our lakes and our rivers and our oceans. And that's not what we intended. So these microbeads, these plastic beads, they are so small that they're consumed by a variety of marine life. We've seen them in plankton. Plankton's about the smallest thing you can get, and yet these microbeads are in plankton. We've seen them in shellfish and in mollusks. We know that fish are ingesting them. And then we're starting with the small fish, but then we go up the food chain to the larger fish. And you think about those microbeads that are accumulating in these fish. Therefore, they're being eaten by, and mollusks being eaten by birds, by seals, by whales, by us, Mr. Speaker. So we're actually at the end of this food chain ingesting this marine life that has these tiny beads of plastic in them. And animals are suffering because of this plastic. We've seen cases of asphyxiation where fish can't breathe, where animals can't breathe. We've seen fish guts filled with plastic, and fish that have actually starved to death because they can't even eat anymore. They're so filled with plastic. We've actually seen disruption at the cellular level. We know that this is having an impact on the very cells of marine life. So there's something terribly wrong here, Mr. Speaker. I don't know that having that rosy glow is worth it when you see that these beads are just going right down the drain and right into our ecosystem like this. We also know that these tiny beads, they're almost like sponges, and they absorb other toxins from the water. We've seen that they absorb DDT, they absorb PCBs, and again, remember, they're in everything from mollusks to fish to seals, and what happens at the end of the day when we're eating that wildlife. Well, how did this happen? We probably have, you know, our grandparents, you remember they would add oatmeal to soap to have that abrasive quality. So that we actually used to use natural products like oatmeal or ground almonds or sea salt. But in the 70s, these little plastic beads were developed and they really took off in the 1990s. And now you almost can't buy a product without these microbeads in them. They're pervasive. They are everywhere. And I will admit, I have fallen into this trap. I see on my facial wash that it has jojoba beads, and I don't do the investigation to find out what that means. And unbeknownst to me, I'm flushing plastic right down my drain, just along with everybody else. We don't realize that these plastics are in our products. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, in toothpaste, there are these plastic beads in toothpaste. Last night, I did a Facebook post at the end of the evening, so it was a little too late for most of my folks on the East Coast to pick up on this post, but other people commented on it, and I had a number of dental hygienists post, and they said that they are seeing these microbeads build up behind people's gum lines, and they actually have to peel this plastic out from behind our gums, which is then causing even more gum disease and damage to our teeth. We didn't expect that to happen. These are the unintended consequences of having put plastics into these products that we're using every single day. And I had lots of people on my Facebook post admit that they had no idea. They just assumed it was something like oatmeal, or assumed that these jojoba beads must be something positive and natural. Well, it's not the case, Mr. Speaker. More education is needed on this issue for sure, but we also need action to actually ban these microbeads from appearing in our products. On the education front, I'll let you know that environmental defense and eco-justice in particular have done a lot of work on this issue. Environmental defense has done a great job of raising awareness around microbeads, and they've talked to me about this and said that there's been incredible pickup from the community at large, that people are interested in this issue, that they don't realize the microbeads are there, and they are really concerned about what it means for our environment and our health. And they've done really good work at the provincial level. For example, in Ontario, I know that there is a piece of legislation, a private member's bill, working its way through the Ontario legislature. I believe it's past second reading, and Environmental Defence has been promoting that work. Well, Environmental Defence has also worked on a petition to deal with this at the federal level. Because if we have one province doing X and one province doing Y, we end up with a patchwork, and it doesn't help anybody, including industry. So Environmental Defence, we've talked about the fact that this should come from the federal level. How do we do it? Well, they've started with a petition. I'll tell you that with this petition, the critics for the environment and the Minister for Environment, we get emails from people. This weekend, Mr. Speaker, I received 2,500 contacts from this petition. I know that there's almost 7,000 signatures on it already. And Environmental Defence is working with, like I said, Eco-Justice and the Lake Ontario Water Keepers and the Ottawa River Keepers, and they have written a letter to the Minister of Environment asking her basically what we're asking for in our motion today, to take the first step of listing this as a toxic substance under SEPA, the Environmental Protection Act, so that we can do an assessment and take that first step towards banning these microbeads. Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to finish up with one piece. A lot of people think that we're taking on the cosmetics industry. Well, you know what? A lot of industry has voluntarily banned these beads. I'm happy to report that Colgate-Palmolive, Unilever, for example, they've actually taken the steps to ban these beads. But they want an even playing field. They want to make sure that everybody is adhering to this, and they want regulation. And I'm holding in my hand a letter from the Canadian Cosmetic, Toiletry and Fragrance Association, and they're talking about our motion here, Mr. Speaker, and they point out the work of my colleague from Windsor West, and they say that this is the general advice and direction for which our industry is most supportive. So we're not getting pushback from industry. We really need to act and ban these microbeads. What we want is to think about the fact that the best way to deal with pollution is to prevent it in the first place. We're on board, the environment groups are on board, and industry is on board. I'm really looking forward to the debate in the House today. I hope that the government's on board with this as well, and that we can act swiftly to get rid of these microbeads before it's too late. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for bringing this issue forward. I listened intently to her speech, and I was wondering if she could make available for the House where she is getting her evidence that there are impacts on humans from the ingestion of fish. My understanding is the current studies that we do have do not demonstrate that there is an impact on humans. I was wondering if she could make those studies available to the House. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Sure, Mr. Speaker. I don't believe I asserted that there were impacts on human health. I believe I asserted that these beads can actually absorb DDT and PCBs, and I asserted that we're eating that fish. So there is a conclusion there to be drawn. I can certainly table the studies that I've seen with consent from the House. It might take me a little while to get them translated, but I can certainly table the studies showing that these beads are actually absorptive of other toxins, and I'd be happy to table any other reports that I've read about the fact that it's actually causing blockages in fish and causing asphyxiation and starvation in fish. This is a real issue. I hope the Parliamentary Secretary is talking to his dental hygienist as well. I mean, there's first-hand knowledge about the fact that this stuff, I mean, if it's accumulating behind our gums, can't we, for the love of God, can't we just say this stuff shouldn't be in toothpaste? I mean, we're not asking for the world here. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues for raising this matter in the House. Clearly, the extended potential harm is much broader than I had understood. The question I'd like to put to my colleague, Mr. Speaker, is this. How is it that these corporations were allowed to include these microbeads into consumer products that are clearly impacting, if not totally directly human health, clearly impacting species that we may rely on for our human health and existence? How is it that this occurred without some kind of thorough environmental impact assessment to prevent this from happening?
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And gosh, I actually wish I could turn the floor over for a 10-minute speech from my colleague, because she's a real expert in this. Oh, that's for you to do, I know. She's a real expert in this area, and she knows about the gaps that we have in our approvals, whether it's via Health Canada or Environment Canada, and the way that we're actually testing products, the way we're testing, goodness, pharmaceuticals even, and the impacts that they're having downstream. And we need to close some of these gaps. I mean, with this particular product, I don't know the full history, but I do know that there was testing about, as I said earlier in my speech, will these microbeads do damage to my precious skin? But where is the testing that needs to be done down the line? I mean, we talk about downstream effects. This is literally downstream. What happens downstream when these tiny pieces of plastic are being ingested? How can there be a hole that big in our regulatory process that we're actually not taking that into account when we know it's going directly into the drain? From face to drain. I mean, that's a huge problem that we need to address, and it's not just Health Canada, it is Environment Canada as well.
Yes. Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Member for Medicine Hat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and just I wanted to thank our honourable colleague across the way for her speech, and just to correct the honourable member from Halifax, ho-ho beads are not actually microbeads, and that they are natural. So I'm wondering where the honourable member is getting her facts from. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Wow, that's like instant correction. I've never seen that from that side of the House. Usually the talking points are written 8 years in advance. So I will tell you that the product that I use has jojoba beads and also has microbeads. So I can bring it in and table it.